Hello everyone, this is Gene and welcome back to Astral Doorway. If you're not yet a subscriber to the channel and if you're interested in astral projection and in particular want to learn how to do it for yourself, then please go ahead and subscribe as there will be hundreds of videos covering many and any subjects of the topic in the years to come. Also, I want to thank everyone who bought my book, Beyond Dreaming, from Amazon. I really hope you're enjoying it. If you're interested in it, I released a video talking a bit about that a few days ago. I want to apologize if there's any typos. If you bought the paperback version when it just came out, I guess you guys have the more authentic version of it, you could say. Since then, it's been updated on Amazon. If you have the ebook version and not yet read the book, then I believe the latest version should have automatically been updated on your device. If not, you may have to turn on automatic updates on your ebook. I'll leave a link in the description for that. But if you have any problems, just ask. And if you enjoy the book, of course, I'd be very grateful if you left a review on Amazon. So, I wanted to cover a bit about the different ways of communicating in the astral, since quite a few of you have asked me about psychic abilities such as clairvoyance, for example. You see, communication in the astral is not so similar to the way we communicate in the physical. You see, in the physical, due to its sort of density, its denseness, it's like there's a thicker cloud of fog between us in the physical, right? We're always struggling to hear each other, right? There's always miscommunications and misunderstandings, and these misunderstandings are amplified even more in the physical when individuals are very asleep, right? Very unconscious and stuck in their heads. We've all met people like that, right? It's easy to tell when someone is more cut off from their being, when they make completely no effort to really listen to you, or they come across very inauthentic or fake, as most would say. So, yeah, that's what it's like in the physical, right? Things are often lost in translation, and we're always guessing what everyone's saying or what everyone means. So, even though there's this difficulty in communication, if one is somewhat awakened to certain internal abilities or occurrences, you could say, one starts to go beyond just spoken language and picks up on information that, in essence, derive from the astral. And, they perceive these things while in the physical. We call these people psychics, right? So, yeah, in the astral, things are significantly different in the sense that there isn't this sort of fog between people. In contrast, communication can often be very clear cut, to the point where too much information can get leaked out from a person. Things about people are more clear and obvious. Messages come through so much more faster and with more precision and clarity, assuming that the receiver is paying attention properly. Communication is so efficient there. I mean, it's not always 100% efficient all the time, but it can be so efficient that it doesn't always require words. things are more naked, so to speak. They're more revealing if you pay attention, which is a lot easier to do in the astral. And these abilities or ways of communication that we can learn in the astral can be bridged into the physical, these abilities. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you can make conscious efforts to understand it in the astral. You can practice it in the physical, but honestly, if you can start astral projecting and practice it in the astral, you will get such a better feel for what it means and how it feels. And once you then go into the physical, you will instinctively know how to practice it because you would have already done it properly in the astral. So, yes, for example, in the astral, if someone is talking to you, you may not just hear words, but you may also actually see the scenes and images that the person is talking about as they speak. In reality, this is what we call clairvoyance, and also clairaudience and clairsentience. So, those so-called psychic powers can be realized and bridged from practicing astral projection. I say so-called because, the word psychic has a lot of connotations to it, right? But when in reality, when you start to understand these things, you realize it's just natural. It's just part of your being, and you realize it's a more natural way to communicate. And in reality, you may realize that you already somewhat do this. Sometimes we say to people, or we think that we get a good impression about people, right? We say that they're a good judge of character, or we say, oh, I guess that person was like that. Or, we get impressions about a person, or we meet someone and, we just know whether we're going to like that person or not. Ignoring superficial judgments about what they're wearing or something. Sometimes you just know or feel certain things about a person before you've even started communicating. So let me give a few examples of what I'm talking about, starting with clairvoyance. One time in the astral, I visited a cinema, a movie theater, and I went in and sat down on the back row. But instead of being interested in what was on the screen, I noticed there were only a few people inside. So I looked over at a man sitting down in the middle row who was watching the screen. Now, I simply just gazed at him, and as I did, I noticed little images start to float all around him. I could visually see things about his life. I saw his little grey-haired, shabby dog walking around. I could see his nice house. I could see cigarettes and that he was a smoker. And I saw people from his family. And so these were things about this man's life, his world, and things that he was sort of thinking about. And as I was noticing all this, he suddenly turned around and looked at me. I realized that I may have been a bit too nosy, so I left. This is also a kind of example of how people can also feel you sensing things about them. But, that effect isn't just in the astral, right? I've had it happen where in the physical, as I'm sure some of you have experienced this, that when you're looking at someone in the physical and sort of thinking or sensing things about them, they suddenly just turn around and look straight in your eyes, right? When they could have looked at anything else. If you've not experienced that before, try it next time when you're out and about. Please let me know if you've experienced that down in the comments. So, yeah, this is one example of clairvoyance. You can literally see visual things about a person. Now, in the physical, this happens in the form of receiving visual mental impressions as you focus on someone or talk to them. We often experience this all the time unconsciously, actually. But most of us aren't aware of our thoughts, never mind spontaneous mental impressions. So it's also a matter of having your awareness receptive and present enough to notice them. It's a skill we can all develop. Now, I have a couple of slightly amusing examples of clairaudience. In one experience, I found myself in a family's home. In the home, the family members were all excited and were celebrating the fact that they were getting some new kittens. However, when I looked at their current cat, their adult cat, I could feel that he wasn't happy. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, in plain English, "I don't like the way humans are. I like you, though. You're simple. Others should be like that." I felt bad for him and asked him why he wasn't happy they were getting kittens. He said, "I'm just not happy they're getting kittens." I asked him why, though, but he didn't explain and just continued on in his mood as cats do. In another experience involving a cat, I was walking down a street when I came across a stray cat. I knew he was stray simply by looking at him. I said hello, and he, again in plain English, said hello back. He was looking at a group of people across the road, and he said to me, "Look at those people over there." I said, "Yes, what about them?" He said, "Humans are pets, not cats." I was surprised by what he said and asked him what he meant by that. But in the typical way of a snobby cat, he turned his back on me uninterested. I then realized what he meant, of course. He was a stray, and like many strays, he probably had a collection of local human pets that he would probably use for food and shelter. So even though you may hear plain English in these telepathic communications, it's not always necessary, but you can see here how communicating to an animal who doesn't usually have the facility to speak human language in the physical can still convey their communication in a way that suits our own human perception, or at least that's how we interpret it through this sort of universal astral translation. Okay, so it's like, for animals, they don't use language, but we can hear them in our own language. Similarly, when we speak to humans who know language, but we can hear their communications, through other ways that aren't through spoken language. And another form of that is through clairaudience. So this is, an example of clairaudience. And clairaudience in the physical is experienced through hearing things, hearing extrasensory audio when we're talking to someone. For example, you might offer someone food and you mentally hear their answer before they say it. Or you can just hear the thoughts of others randomly if you focus on them. So this is very similar to how clairvoyance works. And again, of course, there's also the matter of discerning whether you're hearing your own subconscious thoughts or actual thoughts of other people. So clairaudience and clairvoyance have similarities in the sense that they are sense perceptions in your consciousness that you can notice if you're receptive enough to them. However, clairsentience is a little more subtle. It's best described as telepathy because unlike clairaudience and clairvoyance, you feel the message instantaneously. It's a lot more faster. I gave one such example of this in the video I shared about when I met the priestess in the temple who was doing an astral class. I'll put the link for the video on the screen now for that if you haven't heard it. And when I first went into that temple, she let me know that it was a basic spiritual teaching for the public. Now, she didn't say it in any sort of spoken language. She didn't give me any visuals or audio information. She just looked at me in the eyes and communicated it. And I received and acknowledged the information that was transmitted. It was just like that. Now, in the physical, this ability is experienced when we meet or see new people and we get impressions or feelings about them, right? More direct ways of this is also expressed through the eyes. You know, through the eyes, you can see if a person likes or dislikes what you're saying, or if they're not interested or not listening, or if they're thinking about something else, or, you know, if they just don't like you. There's a lot of things we can understand about people through their eyes alone if you know how to interpret it. So, through all these ways of communication in the astral, you can see how, because these non physical dimensions are less dense, there's a sort of universal, real time auto translation system that gets information communicated effectively, no matter what or who you are or what you're doing. Yeah, it doesn't even matter if you don't speak the same language, and you can even communicate with plants. Actually, in Native American shamanism, this is how what they call medicine men got their remedies for certain ailments. This is how many healers from antiquity came to find their potions and remedies. People would come to them with an illness, and if they didn't know how to heal it, they said, come back in a few days, and then these healers would go out into nature or, just astral project. They would leave their body and they would investigate what plants they would need to heal this person. And then they would wake up and they would bridge this sort of medicine dream, you could call it, by finding the plants that they need. And, in those astral experiences, they were profound experiences where they would essentially communicate with the plants, sometimes even turn into the plants and or merge with them in a sort of powerfully intimate form of, clairsentience, essentially. So it's important to note as well, I've not made any conscious efforts to develop these things specifically. I never even had an interest for it, and generally I still don't. But you can see how great astral projection is, right? Because I understand these things simply from experiencing astral projection. The astral plane is a place where you can come to realize many psychic things like this. because they are just a natural byproduct of our innate abilities, really. And realizing them is a natural product of meditation and astral projection. But with that said, there are a few things you can do to help yourself with these abilities if you're interested. Just a bit of advice from what I've noticed has seemed to help me, or things that I've practiced in the physical in meditation and then have gone on to have experiences in the astral where I've realized that because I did this practice, I've just had an experience that was, deeply in clairaudience or clairvoyance. I can perhaps go into more detail about all of this in the future, but here's a few things you can do if you want to practice these things. So all of these tips are heavily reliant on meditation, so you have to be somewhat sufficient in meditation first. So for clairvoyance, do meditation in the way of noticing the darkness behind your eyelids for extended periods of time. Focus on this darkness, the visual darkness, without wavering your attention. Most of us sit in meditation, close our eyes, and we're not actually paying attention to the darkness there because we're not that present. We're still going off in sort of dream worlds in our imagination. So through visually paying attention, even though there's nothing interesting to see, you will, after time, notice hypnagogic imagery or colors swirling around in your vision. That happens when you meditate for long periods. A lot of you will have experienced that before. And then in the astral, when you communicate with someone, focus on them visually and just simply try to intend to see what they're thinking or what they're speaking about to you. That's really it, focusing on visual aspects. And a similar thing goes for clairaudience too. In long periods of meditation, focus on noticing silence. Our awareness is always trying to listen to sounds, right? But, when's the last time you actually noticed and listened to silence? And within noticing silence, pure audio from your ears for long periods of time in a sort of silent meditation, you'll also start hearing things, hypnagogic audio. And, when you're in meditation and you're hearing these things, you still just carry on your practice. You don't become immersed with them or fascinated by them. You just simply hear them. You hear these extra sensory perceptions. This helps with clairaudience greatly. You can also look into Shabd yoga, which is all about listening to our inner sounds. And that's also a method for astral projection. I'll leave a link in the description below for that if you're interested in Shabd yoga, which has a lot of resources to it if you do the research as well. And then also, once you're in the astral, you can try and find an animal or a plant and focus on just hearing them mentally. You can also talk to them out loud or mentally. And for clairsentience, you have to be in touch with your own emotions and feelings in order to feel others, right? So to develop this, you should do meditations on focusing on being in your body. So, there are meditations out there for body awareness. After all, emotions are the body and how the body feels. There is a lot of intelligence in the body. You may have seen the interesting facts about what science has found, that there are many neurons in the gut as well as the heart. as they are essentially brain neurons, thinking neurons. And actually, there is research to suggest that the heart is somewhat more intelligent or wiser or a more core part of ourselves, because the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So that means that our hearts have more influence over our lives than our brain does, in the sense of decision making and feelings and stuff like that. And the gut, from my experience, is one of the faster ways we can get impressions about other people. You may have met someone new before and you just got a very strong gut feeling, right? And, as people say in their common tongue, a manifestation of our spoken language, a lot of us say, follow your gut or follow your heart. Okay, so that's it. 3 practices. One is meditating for prolonged periods on visual imagery for clairvoyance. Another is on sounds for clairaudience. And the other is on body awareness meditation for clairaudience. And as you strengthen in your practice, you can eventually encompass all 3 aspects in your awareness simultaneously, which will propel you into more profound states of consciousness, both while you're awake and when you're in the astral. Okay, so let me know what you think. If you want to support the channel, there's a link for the Patreon below. All Patreons can listen to episodes early, along with various other benefits. Thanks for listening, and see you on the astral plane.